Okay, well, let's get started. So, welcome to the Empowered Birther. For those catching the replay, for those here live, thank you so much for joining me on this journey and for tapping in and trusting me and staying curious and open for yourself, for your baby, for your life. My intention for this masterclass is to bring you back to your center, your truth, your guiding light, your true north. How do you envision your birth, your life, your becoming as you transition from maid to mother? And yeah, this is my life's work, and I'm so excited to get started. So, um, before we start, I always like to drop into the body. I will be speaking for the next probably hour or so. So it's important that we allow our vessels to be in a place of full receptivity and an allowing of our cells to kind of pick up the information in our body to really settle in. You know, it's so important that we don't get too heady about this stuff because birth isn't done in our heads, it's done in our bodies. So just finding a comfortable seat. We're just going to do a quick couple rounds of slow breathing. So our nervous systems can kind of settle and come into a place of receptivity. So your eyes can remain open for this, or they can be closed, whatever's more comfortable for you. And I want us to concentrate on the space in between our hands. Let's bring our hands like we're holding an imaginary ball of light in between our hands. And on the inhale, we're going to expand our hands out in tandem with our breath for 4 counts. We're going to hold it out for 4 counts. And then we're going to, as we exhale, we'll bring our hands back in towards the center and we're holding it out for 4 counts. So we're going to do a few rounds of that. Join me. Inhaling. 3, 4, holding it out, holding it, 3, 4, and exhaling out the nose or mouth, whatever feels more comfortable to you, coming back, holding it out for 4 counts. Inhaling, 2, 3, 4, holding the expansion, and exhaling, 2, 3, 4, holding that breath out for 4. Inhaling, holding it, expanding your lungs. And exhaling slowly, 2, 3, 4, holding that breath out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 more rounds. Inhaling. Holding it. And exhaling. Holding your breath out. Inhaling. Holding the breath. Exhaling. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just relaxing. I want us to take an inquiry of our internal space. How does your body feel from when you first jumped onto this call to right now? Just witnessing any changes that might have happened in your mind and your body. Know that you're safe. There's nothing you need to think about or worry about for the next hour. Just listen and be open. Let's get started. For those that are on live, I can't see you right now since I've shared my screen. So if you want to interject or make any comments, just take yourself off mute and say whatever comes through. So the empowered birther, this lecture, I hate using the word lecture, but this expression of my heart, of my life's purpose, will probably go for a little bit, close to an hour. Um, I will be talking about my upcoming program that will be launching in November towards the end. So stick around if you want to hear about that. And as an umbrella, everything that we are going through within this class will be uncovered deeper throughout the program. So just keeping that in mind, if this resonates and lights you up and gets you excited, know that you have an opportunity to go in deeper with me. And so, yeah, the empowered birther, this came to me in a meditation a few months ago. And so I'm so excited and so happy that it's finally emerging from the birth canal, and I can finally talk about it and express it in a way that I feel will help so many of you. So let's dive in. So first of all, for those that do not know me, my name is Lauren, born and raised in the Northeast. Ever since I was a little girl, and I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old, birth has always been my North Star. It's always intrigued me. I've always felt drawn to it. Like everything about it just really lit me up and lights me up. And I can remember as a kid renting The Miracle of Life VHS. And like, yes, I'm that old. And this is a movie that basically showed conception and a full birth at the end. And I would just fast forward to the end and I would watch the full on vaginal delivery. I would rewind it and rewatch it, rewind it and rewatch it. I was so obsessed with the female body and how amazing birth was, just the whole experience of it. I can remember running home from school in elementary school, trying to catch a baby story on TLC because I didn't want to miss the delivery part. And I knew about epidurals and contractions and the stages of labor and how a woman's body goes through this process before I even learned basic subtraction and division and, you know, basic history. Like this was my thing, you know. And I can remember even watching women give birth, and I would find myself becoming aroused in a way that, of course, as a 5-6-year-old, I didn't know what arousal meant, right? But I was just there was a part of me that was ignited. I know back, you know, looking now, my solar plexus and my womb center was just so lit up and like felt so good. And I always, the idea of having sensuality and sexuality mixed with birth was never compartmentalized for me. I always understood it as like a fluid thing that you can get turned on and ignited by watching a woman give birth because it's so intertwined to our pleasure and the same, you know, we'll get into this, but it just lit me up so much. So I'd make my Barbies have babies. Like any movie that had to do with birth, I would just dive headfirst in. I was just so obsessed. And eventually I got my art degree and I went for art therapy, but then I realized maybe I want to be a midwife. So I went back to nursing school and I eventually got a job in organ transplant, which I didn't really love, but it served its purpose because I knew I wanted to be in the maternity world. And I got a job in New Jersey for my first labor and delivery job. And to be honest, it was not what I was expecting at all. The main theme, and I'm going to say, you know, where I trained, but I think a main theme for the allopathic medical system in general in the world of childbirth is like fear. Like how much fear can we drive into the women giving birth, the doctors, you know, helping this process, and the nurses helping this process, because, you know, our licenses are on the line and like we don't want to get sued and all these things. So it was very much about like covering our butts and like making sure our charting was right. And like it didn't feel like it was centered around the woman. and the birth experience, if that made sense. I remember talking to one of the midwives that I had worked with, and she looked at me and was like, if you want to be a midwife, like, don't take my route, like, don't do this. I'm a glorified resident. This is not what I thought it could be. And so that really opened my eyes. The first week of work, I remember going to a resident and expressing to her how much I love the idea of having a home birth and just birth in general. And I remember her looking at me like I had 10 heads. And she was like, are you crazy? Like, you've got to be out of your mind. And so it was very much like instilling fear. That was the main theme, that I felt like it was fight or flight going into work, like, all the time. And I'm not saying that, if you're delivering in a hospital, this is what you're going to experience. This is just my observation and my perception of coming in as someone who's supporting women through this time in their lives. It was very much like, how quickly can we get the baby out? How can we, keep everyone safe so we can save our butts and not get, in a lawsuit. So yeah, just, it didn't feel right for me. And so I joined the ecstatic birth practitioner training. The founder, Sheila Kamara Hay, one of my teachers, I just love her so much. And I'm so grateful that I signed on to that program and that training, because being in a like-minded container with other women who see birth the same way that you do just lit me up. And it just was just so nourishing to my heart and my soul. And it made me realize I wasn't crazy for feeling these ways about birth, and how I feel like there's my purpose in this birth world, and in empowering women is just like so much bigger. And I felt I needed to make that transition to be able to start educating and to be able to start telling women that they can have their choices and they can make informed choices for them and their body and their birth, and how do they want it to look, and to stop outsourcing all their power to someone outside of them, whether that be a doctor, a midwife, a family member, whoever, like, bringing that power back to them. That's just my intention for this work. And through that time, I got my Kuala Tantra yoga training down in South America, and I spent a lot of time in Central America and Latin America, working with the midwives, working with the plants and the land, and the elders and the crones, the wisdom keepers of this knowledge, and seeing how they approached this work and approached birth work and life in general, because birth work is life work. How we show up in life is how we're going to show up in birth. And that's just been always so known to me. And so seeing how people live in another country, where it's like, okay, it's not all about go, go, go and how much you can have and all these things. So it was really a guiding light for me. And as I delayered and unlearned, there's a lot of unlearning that I had to go through from being indoctrinated into that medical system, and now coming out of it and seeing that there are other ways to facilitate a beautiful and safe birth experience. And for those of you that know me, know that I am a Sag at heart. Like, travel to me is my biggest teacher. And like I said, it was a way for me, or is a way for me, to learn about my own shadow and learn about the world, and how it's just, there's so many facets to how we can view life and how we can view world. And getting out of our comfort zones, specifically through solo travel, has really helped me uncover parts of myself that I didn't even think were possible, and has given me such a deeper sense of self-confidence and trust in my intuition and my knowing. So yeah, big advocate of seeing the world and seeing how different cultures live. And I have recently transitioned into being a women's empowerment pleasure coach, ecstatic birth mentor, like really being the ignition behind women and having them look into a mirror with fresh eyes of seeing, like, you can do this. Like, your desires are your desires for a reason. And cultivating that relationship with that deeper knowing of yourself, your womb, your pleasure centers, and knowing that you can lead your life from that space just lights me the hell up. Like, when seeing a mom specifically, like, after birth, and like looking at me in the eyes and being like, I did it, like, that newfound power, that newfound, like, when we're met with resistance and we feel like we can't go anymore, whether that's in birth or life or whatever, and then moving through that threshold and being on the other side of it and being like, hell yeah, I did that. It completely changes your life. It completely changes how you see your life, how you see yourself, how you see the world. And so, I get so passionate about it. And I really believe that through, specifically with women, tapping into our womb wisdom and our cyclical rhythms of how we are with our body and the world, the intelligence is there. And so teaching women how to reframe and re-understand that their sexuality and their pleasure and their sensuality and their feeling is their superpower. So yeah. And I preface with all this because, many women or men might be looking at me like, okay, well, that's great that you've helped deliver, babies earthside and you've been a part of it, but you've never experienced it yourself. And I'm here to tell you that yes, we all have experienced this. We've all come through wounds, whether that was through the vagina or through the belly. We've experienced it. The ancestral wisdom that runs through our DNA, like we have coding, we know. This is as simple as like, how the knowledge that like a newborn baby knows how to swim until I think it's like 6 months. I gotta check on that. But like the innate knowing in us, the innate knowing that we have everything within us to be able to birth our babies in a way that we feel is right for us. And so when people say like, oh, you haven't done it yourself, it's just like, come at me with a different ammo, because we all have done this. And this is where I'm most passionate about telling women, like, you do have the wisdom. The wisdom is within you. The same wisdom that runs through a flower to tell it how to bloom runs through you. And like, so trusting in that gnosis is it just fires me up, as you can tell. And so throughout this class, throughout this lecture, I want you to really tune into for yourself, like, what does it mean to have an empowered birth experience? Whether you're birthing an actual child, or you're birthing an idea or a relationship or a business, or anything that is using that creative energy, that prana, that life force that we all have running through us, creating something from an empowered place. Like, what does that feel like to you? And today specifically, we're talking about childbirth. So experiencing an empowered birth, like closing your eyes and envisioning what that feels like within your body, because the feeling state is the most important thing. Our bodies need to be comfortable with feeling these things so we can have the confidence to take a step forward from that place of deep wisdom. And the only place that we can receive that wisdom is through our bodies, and through getting still and knowing and understanding what we want. It's like, what do you want? What do you desire? What do you see an empowered birth experience for yourself? Not what everybody else is doing. What is your experience? What do you desire? How do you want your birth experience to be? And yeah, just tuning into that pulse, like let's bring that in as I'm speaking. And I encourage you, if anything comes up and you want to jot it down or journal about it, please do. Okay, so for me, I believe there are 5 main pillars to having an empowered birth experience, for setting yourself up to have an ecstatic, a blissful, an empowering birth experience. So first one being mindset, intention, in correlation with our relationship spirit. And this is like, let's start thinking about our mindset, our programming. When we come out of the womb, from the second we take our first breath, we are already imprinted. In conception, in the womb, we are receiving downloads from our mother. From that immediate environment that we are in, we are receiving codes of how to exist in this 3D world, how to exist on this place we call Earth. And so we are being programmed, we are being imprinted from the second we take our first breath. And so, yeah, mindset about birth. It's like, what kind of things have you been experiencing regards to childbirth? What does your culture think about birth? What does your culture feel about rites of passage for a woman. How does your culture honor a woman getting her first bleed, a woman going from maiden to mother, a woman going from mother to crone in menopause? How do we honor those transitions? Do we shame them? Do we put them down? Do we instill fear in everybody? When really the magic is in them, is in the transition. You know, life isn't meant to be beautiful and rainbows and butterflies all the time. Sometimes it's the dirt, it's the soil, it's the messiness, it's the bloody, it's the flesh. It's feeling with these bodies that we only have for a very short time. And so how have you been programmed? How does your society view birth? Have you, all the movies you've been watching, have they been screaming down the hall and, you know, like screaming in ravenous pain of needing someone to come save them? All this subconscious programming is like from the ages of 0 to 7, we are being programmed deeply. And so within that time frame, what was happening to you to make you see the world and to see birth in a way that you maybe, you know, want to change? Intention. Intention is important for how we show up to life in general, but intention in how we want to have a birth. If we don't have intention, if we don't have a sense of how we desire this to feel and to be, it leaves it up to the ultimate unknown, which is very disempowering. Like birth is enough unknown. It's enough of mysterious as it is. So it's like, how can we reclaim some of that? And allowing our choices to make choices from a place of empowerment and spirit. You know, what is your connection to the something greater than you? Do you have a connection to something greater than you, whether that be God, Goddess, Pachamama, Mother Earth, the universe, source, whatever that is, that's something that you know that you can trust, capital T, trust. And to know that where you receive your insights, where you receive your downloads. What does that connection look like for you? Breath. Breath is the vehicle for prana. Breath is what allows us to ride the waves of contraction and expansion within life and within birth. You know, we breathe all day, every day, but how often are we really conscious of our breath? Like, how often do you really tap into yourself and say, thank you, breath. Thank you, lungs. You'll be so surprised how many people are disassociated from their lung tissue, their diaphragm. And it's such a place that we can hold trauma and store such deep energies. So really cultivating that relationship with your breath. Sound vocation. Sound vocation. Wow. Activating your throat chakra, activating this place. Our throats are so deeply connected to our pussies and our yonis. And so how do we express ourselves throughout life in general? What kind of boundaries do we have with ourselves? Are we comfortable with speaking our truth? And using sound as a vibratory tool to heal and to negate pain. You know, it's so deep, but pleasure is my favorite one. But we're so focused on, like, if we need to get something done, it needs to be work hard, dig, dig, dig. And it's like, how can we reframe that? How can we allow more pleasure into our lives? Allow more sensuality into our lives, and realizing, making that connection that birth can be a pleasurable experience. And if you find yourself rolling your eyes at that, like, check in and see where that rolling of that eyes is coming from. Where are your beliefs coming from of why the idea of pleasure and childbirth have such polarity to you? You know, so thinking about that. And of course, embodiment techniques. As women, we birth with our bodies. We don't birth with our minds. And yet our body is our mind. We think our minds are in our heads, but it's our full body. And so really learning practices and tapping in with the wisdom of your body daily is pivotal. And so we touched on this a little bit: mindset, intention in correlation with our relationship to spirit. Like I said, what are your beliefs your narratives about birth. Like, let's bring back the intention and the ritual around birth. Like, what happened to the spiritual aspect of birth? Let's honor it as the rite of passage that it is, and an understanding that there is not only a birth, but there is a death as well. There is a death of who you knew yourself to be. There's a grieving process that comes along with birth, whether or not you have a loss. You go home with a newborn baby and you are simultaneously grieving the loss of the maiden and who you were, as you are welcoming and happy with the birth of this new being. So allowing space for all of it. And I really believe that mindset and intention can really set ourselves up to experiencing that bliss and trusting and knowing that all of our emotions are valid. They are not wrong or right. They are what they are. And so having a relationship with that. What are your beliefs in relationship about pain? What is your relationship with pain? How do you relate to pain? Do you numb? Do you push away? Do you stuff down? Do you not want to look at it? And I'm not talking just about physical pain. I'm talking about emotional pain, mental pain. Do you allow yourself the time to feel it? And look, I'm not saying that we all don't numb. Like, we all numb ourselves. It's a way for us to self-soothe. But in a majority, if you're in the preconception phase or you're pregnant now, just start tapping into when uncomfortable emotions arise in you. How do you navigate that? How do you dance with your shadow? How do you dance with your pain? Birth work is shadow work. And I will say that to the day I die. Things are going to come up within you as you're gestating. You have 9 whole months, preferably before you even conceive, but you have 9 whole months to really do some self-inquiry of, how do I relate to my pain? How do I relate to the darkness that is my magic, that is my superpower? Our shadows as women, I mean, the patriarchy has really done a great job of making us think that we're wrong and that our feelings are wrong. And that's just false. It's just not true. So reframing that and understanding that our pain is just our bodies, our spirits speaking to us. So how can we listen to that? I believe making conscious choices about our birth team, where we want to birth, how we want to birth, what kind of things we want surrounding us. Like, making choices from a connected, in tune place can be so empowering. Knowing that you made that choice to be with that specific provider or to have this specific birth plan, like, having that choice, that sovereignty is everything. It can negate a lot of regret that can happen postpartum. It's like, oh, I wish I would have thought about this so I could have chosen this from a more empowered place. And surrounding yourself with positive birth stories and positive media and people, whether it's your auntie coming at you with like, girl, you're gonna need that epidural, and like and holding firm boundaries of like, I don't need to hear that. Thank you, I love you, thank you for coming at me with that, but no, I'm creating a bliss bubble for my birth. And so for the next however months, whether you're in preconception phase or you're delivering, honoring that and trusting that you are sensitive. You're like a sponge right now. So surrounding yourself with positive, like, go on YouTube, watch orgasmic birth. Like, we need to know that it's possible, and we need to understand that it's possible before we can experience it ourselves. Education. This is a kind of a fine line, because we think education is like very much through the mental space, and birth is not something that you can think your way through. So if you know for yourself that you're a very heady person, you're very calculated, you need to know your things, how you need to know them. It's like, yes, like, take the courses, read the books, watch the tutorials, empower yourself with just enough knowledge to where you feel like you can lean on that. Because when someone is educated, when they have knowledge, that is a place of empowerment too for them. So they can come from a place of a knowing and a trusting in that. It can build a deeper confidence. But I tread lightly on this because I don't want you to get too heady about it. Education is important, but too much can be overwhelming. And so knowing when it's like, okay, like I'd rather you understand that your body has the wisdom too, and that, you know, leaning on our education of our mind is not always so important, and that to trust in the building of the education of yourself. There's a lot of fear around the medicalization of birth. I know there's been instances for me where some of my providers haven't really listened to what my heart was trying to tell them. I didn't feel very heard in the medical system. And so there can be a lot of that fear, regardless if you're birthing at home or birthing in a birth center or birthing in the hospital. 9 times out of 10, the providers that you have been through this system. They've gotten their degrees and their licenses through this system. So they are indoctrinated with this stuff. And so it's like knowing that you're predisposed sometimes, going to the gynecologist, when you're younger, and maybe you were touched in a way that you didn't want to be touched, and it didn't feel right to you, but they're the ones in the white coat, so you trusted them, and then you just felt shitty after. It's like, let's kind of have compassion for ourselves and our bodies, that yes, in our minds we may think that we can trust the allopathic medical system, but knowing that if our body constricts and doesn't feel safe, that it's not your fault. So yeah, also like determination, spiritual practice, mindset. This is the deep foundation. If you don't have a connection with the something bigger, with your spirit, your God, your goddess, different deities that you might pray to, your own body, Mother Earth, like if you don't have something that's bigger than yourself, that that connects us all, that's a guiding light for you, this journey is going to be a lot more difficult than it needs to be. And knowing and trusting that we have that guidance to tap into and to trust. And so before you even get pregnant, strengthening that cord, strengthening that connection. Breath. I'm trying to like get my little face out of here. So breath, breath, breath. Breath is our vehicle for prana. Breath is how we move our life force energy. And during birth, you are going to have the most amount of prana running through your body than any other point in your life. This is going to be the most capital I intense experience that you will go through in this 3D form as a human. And so leaning on your breath as an ally, turning to breath and trusting that that's what's going to get you through those intense contractions or surges or intensities, to be able to separate yourself from the pain, to be able to tap into that breath, that rhythm. The rhythm is most important, because the rhythm is what's going to pendulate us, and the rhythm is what's going to allow us to get into that space, that meditative space, to allow our babies to come through us, and we can get into a space. We will be in the program, I talk about how we go through different brainwave states throughout the process of labor, and how that's nature's way of allowing us to be in the process and to be not a victim of it, if that makes sense. And giving birth is the most intense and deep breathwork session you will ever do. Hands down. Yeah, and like I said, you'll be so surprised to know how many of us are disconnected from our lung tissue and our diaphragm. And so getting in a daily habit of communing with our breath. Maybe taking a deep breath right now and just settling in and being aware of this beautiful rhythm that keeps going for us, and honoring that. And obviously breath is is how we can expand our container for our central nervous systems. Our nervous systems are going to be like the 4th of July when we give birth. It's just going to be like boom, 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 boom. And so training our breath and training our nervous systems to be able to expand and hold the intensities is what's going to allow us to tap into that state so we can get to a place where we can have an orgasmic experience and a pleasurable experience. Our breath is everything. There's a reason why yogis and Buddhas and monks breathe to get into a place of connection. Like I said, it's a natural pain relief and focus. It allows us to become the observer of the pain and not be so victimized by it. It distributes prana. Like I said, our breath is our vehicle for our prana. It oxygenates the baby. I can't tell you how many times I've had to turn to a laboring woman and like grab her by the cheeks and be like, honey, breathe, breathe. Because what is our first, reaction to when we know pain is coming? We tighten up and our shoulders get up to our ears and we're just like constricted, and we hold our breath. And that's just the complete opposite of what we need to learn to do. So getting into a practice and getting into a habit of when intensities arise in you, you lean into your breath and you oxygenate your baby. This is just as an intense time for your baby as it is for you. And so knowing that you're in this together, you're a dyad, you're a team. And so knowing that when these intensities happen, you have to breathe for your babe. It's the biggest marathon for both of you, and trusting in that. And our lungs produce something called DMT or dimethyltryptamine, and it's a way that it's called the God molecule. It's the same molecule that's in the vine, the ayahuasca vine, and it allows us to experience and transcend and tap into those various states of consciousness. And we can have ecstatic experiences just from breathing. You can have psychedelic experiences just through your breath. And so the breath is the vehicle that can help you get there. It can help you get to that theta state, that place of being one with source. Oops. Sound vocation. For those of you that haven't seen it, I do have an IG live on my Instagram. I think it's a few rows down. And a dear sister and I we did a whole IG live about sound vocation. She's a vocal coach. And so she was really knowledgeable about the different toning and the different, it's just such a gem. I really encourage you, when you guys have time, to go check that out. It goes to a lot deeper into this. And all of these categories, I could talk about, each of them like all day. So this is just like a skimming of the surface of what we will be going into in my program in November. So throat chakra clearing. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but this is like, what is your relationship with your throat? In general, as the feminine, we have been constricted in this area for thousands of years, not being able to speak our truth, not being able to say what's really on our hearts in fear for our lives, really. And so there's so much constriction that we hold as feminine bodied beings, just from epigenetics, just from what we've received from our mothers, from our grandmothers, like going back and how suppressed we were with how we were speaking in our vocal cords. In general, are you connected to your throat? Do you sing? Do you hum? You don't have to sound beautiful. It's not about that. It's about feeling the vibration and cultivating that relationship with speaking your truth and saying what you want and having firm boundaries and singing and laughing and humming and toning. Do you have mantras that you use. Speaking things into existence, it's spelling, you're saying it out loud, you're making it manifest. And so clearing that work and knowing that our throats are so connected to our yonis, our pelvic bowl, via the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve connection, the vagus nerve starts in our craniosacrum, like right at the base of our head, all the way down past our throat, past our chest, our thoracic cavity, all the way down into our pelvic bowl. And so when we tone, that vibration goes all the way down into our pussies. I say pussy a lot because let's reclaim that word. Thank you, Regina Thomas-Schauer. I encourage you to read her book, Pussy: A Reclamation. Yeah, just getting comfortable with that. So the vagus nerve, we are vibrational beings, right? Like if we take a big enough microscope and we zoom in enough, we just see that we are literally light vibrating. Like that's what we are. And so creating that vibration, we can heal ourselves with our voice. And this is something that I've really stepped into the past few years, and honoring my sound and my song. Like when I was younger, I would have never sung in front of anybody. Like it was so shameful. I had so much shame around my voice. And now I'm singing in ceremony and I'm singing by myself. I'm anywhere you can, just get in touch with your voice. Start using it. Okay, yeah. So obviously liberated throat, liberated yoni. We have various sphincters throughout our body. And if we open our throat and open our jaws and keep a nice relaxed jaw and throat area, it dilates, it opens our diaphragm, the diaphragm within our pelvis, our cervix. It creates space. So like deep opening primal tones is what is going to help bring that baby through. If you don't feel comfortable making those primal tones and those deep animalistic sounds in front of other people, then you might want to think about why they're at your birth. If you can't make erotic, deep, primal sounds in front of others, then you're probably not going to want them seeing you birth, because you want to feel safe. You want to feel like no inhibitions at all. Pain relief, like I said, vibration, it's like a tuning fork. It moves the energy. Pain is just energy. The contractions are energy. Your baby moving through your birth canal sends energy up your nervous system. So if we can counteract that with some voice movement, we move it through versus being constricted and stuck by it. And when in doubt, make it sound like the best sex ever. Like if you want to roar your baby earthside, then you roar. I can remember a time I was in the hospital and it wasn't my patient, but a nurse had come out and she was like trying to shush her patient because the woman was like being loud. And every time a contraction come, you could hear her down the hall, and it was like, oh, it was like so loud. And she was like trying to shush her. And I just got so heated. I had to just like get up and walk away, because I was just like, even at that point in my life, before I even dove deeper into the potentiality and how screwed up the birth system is in our world, like I knew better. I knew better that like her shushing down that woman from tapping into her vocal cords during birth, she clearly didn't understand what was happening. And now I have compassion for that nurse, because I see the indoctrination and the program that we go through as providers in this world. But yeah, so just making it sound like the best sex ever, and like practice in the car, practice in the shower, just like do your thing. And sounding also helps us breathe better. When we're sounding, when we're all the way, what do we have to do? Take a deep inhale. So the sounding and the breath are very intertwined. Pleasure is my favorite. It's my favorite pillar, obviously. because it's such a reclamation. It's such a reclamation, especially as women. I feel like for so long, and still so many women on this planet are so shackled to like not being able to express what makes them feel good and just settling for like subpar bullshit that I'm just like, no, no more. This is the age of Aquarius. This is the age of coming together and speaking our truth and changing paradigms, changing the way we do stuff. And if we can't change the way we do birth, we're not going to change the world. So I love pleasure, because who doesn't? This is an invitation for you to reframe your relationship with pleasure. Do you feel you're worthy for pleasure? Do you feel that as a being that you have a connection with what makes you feel good? If we don't know what makes us feel good, how can we heal? And so giving ourselves grace within that world. There's two types of pleasure: intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic just meaning, for example, you're with your partner, you're kind of getting all hot and heated, and you start feeling the pulsation down in your pelvic bowl internally. You feel the pulsation rising. Or when your foot falls asleep and the feeling starts to come back, you feel those tingles inside. What does it feel like within your heart center? Inside your body? And that can be quite difficult for a lot of people to tap into that. How am I feeling? We always go to our head of, well, I'm feeling a little bit low energy today. Okay, well, what does that feel like within your body? And so reframing that. Extrinsic pleasures. So touch, sensual touch, just being in our sensual body. So what sounds are feeling good to you? What smells are feeling good to you? Smell is such a primal, it's one of the first senses that come online in utero. When we come through our mother's birth canal, that smell of her blood and her tissue, that's our first smell. And so it's deep, deep in the limbic brain. It's in our animalistic system. So having smells around that make you feel good, having a diffuser or candles or things that are going to make you feel safe. And smell is such a beautiful way to add that in. Yoni massage and de-armoring prior to birth is so important. This one is so deep, and I could talk all day about this bullet point alone. But if you don't have a solid practice of tuning into your yoni, having a self-pleasure practice, de-armoring her, touching her, maybe uncovering the parts of her that are kind of numb, and you want to understand what's there. As women, we are the sponges. Our womb space holds so much energy, not just babies. We hold dreams, visions, like we hold so much. If we have past energetic connections with old partners, that can all be stuck and stagnant within our bodies. When our nervous system goes through something, our nerves are physical things. We like to think of the nervous system as some like archaic, like not real thing, but there's actual nerves that send signals throughout our body that are connected deeply to the fascia. And our fascia is deeply connected to our pelvic bowl. It's a huge net of networking. And so if our fascia is tight and we're holding tension in our womb and our pelvic bowl, we can have a displaced uterus. It can be, anterior, posterior. It can make fertility difficult. So getting in tune with massaging your lower belly and getting a yoni wand and working with your internal structure and clearing any traumas that you might not even be mentally aware of that you're holding down there. And ideally, this is a journey that you enter into before you even conceive, because this is deep shadow work and a lot of stuff can come up. And so specifically in labor, when you're having the baby, the physical action of this baby pushing its way down through that fascia and those tendons, those ligaments, those muscles of the birth canal and that pelvic bowl, that tissue is going to be as stretched as it could ever be. And so that's going to release a lot of stuff that maybe you weren't aware of. And so clearing that before you have your baby, I can't tell you how many women, when it's come time to like transition phase and birth, where it's like they're just about to start pushing and it's so intense, and they just, all these memories come up. And so their body goes into fight or flight because they don't know how to handle those emotions that arise. They don't want to think about a traumatic experience that they had, when they were 15, and that comes up, that fear, your body just goes into it. Your body just goes into it. So yeah, that's a big one, but I do offer one-to-one mentoring now. And I lean on pleasure as my main guiding light to teach women how to tap into the rhythms and clear anything that they have in their wombs, get connected to their cervix and their G-spot and their yonis, and getting connected and with their clits, and just like enjoying this part of their body because it's been so shut down. And I'm getting emotional talking about it because this is such a chain of pain that I really feel like we have such ability to break from. And so if you're curious about that, if you're not pregnant yet and you want to work through some of that, I have space to hold you through that. When in doubt, self-pleasure during birth, like hand on clit, vibrator on clit, like get your partner to start stimulating your nipples, giving you massage, like make it as pleasurable as you can. If you're uncomfortable self-pleasuring, even in front of your partner, I encourage you to maybe push your edge a little bit and discuss this with your partner and be like, hey, I want to self-pleasure during this. Do you think you could help me with that? Help me find the confidence to do that. Talk to your provider, your midwife. Be like, hey, I'm gonna masturbate during my birth because masturbation releases oxytocin and beta endorphins and all the same endorphins that are going to deliver your baby. If the statement birth is a sexual act triggers any part of you, I invite you to kind of unpack that a little bit. And this is radical work, this orgasmic birth, ecstatic birth, telling women that they can have pleasure through their birth. Some of them don't want to hear it because they have so much trauma and programming around feeling pleasure. I grew up Catholic, and we were told the story of Eve and how she's chained the pains of childbirth as her punishment for eating the apple from the snake, which is just our Kundalini sexual energy. And so having an awareness that what gets the baby in is what gets the baby out. The same exact hormones, the same exact engorgement of the tissues down there. We have the same exact amount of erectile tissue as men. We just can't see it. Ours is internal. And so getting to know her, like do mirror work, like yoni gaze. Get your little hand mirror and start looking at her. How does she like to be touched? And moving that Kundalini yoga energy. It's possible to have an internal orgasmic experience with just your breath and your awareness. Your awareness of this energy that we hold in our navel center. In Kundalini yoga, this is our navel center. This is our power center. This is our center. Our navel is how we get shit done in the world. It's how we birth our babies. This energy is so powerful. And so being able to move this energy up through your body as a way of bringing pleasure and life force throughout everything can bring you not just a pleasurable birth experience, but it can heighten your intimate experience, your sexual experience. And how you orgasm during sex is how you can orgasm during birth. So using the bedroom as a training ground for how, if like next time you're intimate with yourself or with a partner and you're becoming aroused and you're about to reach that peak, like understand that start thinking about that these feelings, this feeling that's arising within me can also be felt in childbirth. Like, just start bringing that together and understanding that this is possible for me. Like, how you orgasm during sex, like, are you shy? Do you not are you meek? Are you quiet? Or do you fucking roar in your pleasure? And you don't give a shit who freaking hears you. You know, it's like, so using that as like a muscle. Pleasure is a muscle, which is a beautiful thing. We can exercise it. Let's see, anything else I want to say about that? Yeah, just like practice, 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 practice. And this is not like a goal. Like, how much can we feel? Embodiment. Embodiment. So this is another big one. We're going a little bit past time here, so I'm going to try and wrap this up. Body awareness and safety. For our nervous systems to feel safe, like, we can think our way. We can think that we're safe in a situation. Say we chose to be in the hospital to give our birth because, you know, our rational mind and those around us have told us that giving birth in the hospital is the safest place to do so, which I'm not saying it's not. You can have the doctors and the nurses and the resuscitation equipment and the NICU right next door. You can have all that knowing. But if your body, if your vessel, your body, your animal body does not feel safe within that environment, it is not an optimal place for you to labor and give birth. Your body needs to feel safe. Safety is a foundation for pleasure. It's a foundation for feeling. It's a foundation for allowing your body to go through the process that it has to go through. I mean, if we see mammals give birth, they're usually like by themselves. It's nature's beautiful creation. I mean, it's you know, back in the day when we were delivering as cave women, if a saber-toothed tiger was coming up at us, we needed to get the F out of there. And so it halts our labor when we're not feeling safe. When we go into fight or flight, fear is the antidote to oxytocin and all these things that are going to allow our babies to come through. We need to feel safe. De-armoring. So we talked about de-armoring the yoni and the vaginal tissue, but de-armoring places in your body. We hold tension everywhere. Like, we hold anger in our shoulders. I love doing like a jaw massage of just like feeling and like, how do we hold our bodies in space? Being aware of how do we sit? What is the relationship of the space of how we hold our body in space? It's such a subtle thing, but it's so important. It's so important because we can change our mind state by getting into the body. So yeah, like massage, having massage even as a tool during birth helps release oxytocin, dopamine, the beta endorphins, all the good things. Dancing. My teacher, Sheila Kamara, the owner, founder of Ecstatic Birth, she talked about how in her third birth, she had this orgasmic experience and she found it through dancing. And Maha Al-Musa, another teacher I have, she teaches belly dancing to get women prepped for birth because, again, the undulating of the hips, the moving of the hips, the dancing, how connected are you to your dance? Do you dance in everyday life? It's not about what it looks like. It's about what it feels like. I mean, I was a dancer my whole life, ballet. And it wasn't up until the past maybe 3 or 4 years that I really leaned into dance as a cathartic experience of like, let me move this emotion through. Our bodies are always speaking to us. Pussy gazing. I talked about this in the pleasure module, but it's like, get to know her, look at her. You'd be so surprised how many women do not know what their pussies look like. Or if they see it, they feel shame. They feel like it's wrong. And so I invite you to step through those resistances and to know that this part of my body is my temple. This is my powerhouse. If we can lead, like Regina Thomashower says, if a woman is connected to her pussy, she can change the world. And so knowing that, your intimacy with yourself and your partners, are you shameful of your body? Can you look in the mirror naked? And regardless of all the ridiculous standards that we hold on ourselves and society holds on ourselves as women to have this ideal body type that doesn't even really exist. And so honoring your body with love and maybe putting your hands on places of your body that you may have felt shame before and saying, I love you, thank you. That gratitude is so powerful. Holding shame within our bodies is probably one of the lowest vibrations that we can hold. We want our babies to come through awakened, empowered, juicy wombs. We don't want them coming through a portal of shame. Surrendering to the body's wisdom. We have to surrender. Just like in a psychedelic experience, we have to release control. I release control so I can surrender to the flow. Yes, we want to be an active participant, but there comes a point of like, let's release control and surrendering to the body's wisdom. If you like, this happens sometimes right in the transition phase with women where like they are tapped into this intelligence and they know, they have to change positions, or they start getting up and walking, or they'll squat. Your body knows what to do, but we have to listen to it. And so cultivating that relationship before we even get pregnant is key. This is the biggest marathon of your life. You don't train for it a week before your marathon. You train for it before it even starts. You get yourself a coach. You get your nutrition right. You figure all this stuff out beforehand. And last but not least, fawning and the people-pleasing wound. Oh my God, this one is so deep. I'm just going to touch on it real quick. One of my teachers, Kimberly Ann Johnson, she wrote a book called The Call of the Wild. I encourage you guys to read it. It's a really great book, but it talks about the nervous system and how we've all learned, right? There's the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, the fight or flight, and the rest and digest. But there's a third system that was just found in I think the mid 80s. And it's the idea of a social nervous system. And specifically as women, in general, we are the estrogen dominant of the sexes in general. We have about 80% more estrogen than men do. And so this social nervous system is highly dependent on estrogen. It's a mammalian instinct. It's something that only mammals have. And it's a way of protecting our tribes. It's a way of knowing what our baby needs by facial cues. Our orbital lobes and our face and our ears, this whole way we perceive is our social nervous system. And so sometimes trauma responses can come up as you're fawning, or you want to fit in, or you want to code switch, or you want to camouflage, because being seen equals danger. And we will dive much more deeper into the empowered birther. But this is an example of a woman, a doctor comes in, kind of gives her the rundown of what's going to happen in her induction or whatever happens in birth. And the doctor leaves, and nothing is really sitting right with her. Nothing really feels good about what the doctor said. But in that moment, she felt like she couldn't speak up. And I've had conversations with women after they've delivered, and they've said, I don't know why I couldn't speak up. I couldn't advocate for myself in that moment. It's a trauma response, not being able to speak. And so knowing that, and this is another reason why when women get to menopause and their estrogen starts dipping, they're like, peace out. Y'all take care of yourself. Like, I'm done taking care. I'm done worrying about what everyone else is thinking, and I'm going to do me. And so realizing that that's a gift, but also it can be to our detriment. And so recognizing that and bringing awareness to that. Okay, so that is the end of the lecture portion. I just want to talk for like 2 minutes about my upcoming offering that I'm so excited to share with you all. It is called the Empowered Birther, and it is going to be a 3-month membership journey, part recorded, part live, for you guys to, yeah, just like bring all of you to. It's a 3-month membership for women seeking guidance, community, and just like education, self introspection during preconception and birth. So what's included? 2 pre-recorded modules each month will be released. So every 2 weeks, with a total of 6 modules. There will be embodiment practices in accordance to each module, Kundalini Kriyas, audio meditations, PDF, journal prompts, different bonuses will be offered as well. There'll be 3 live 1.5-hour Zoom calls with me and the Empowered Birther community. My intention is to keep this container intimate and a little bit on the smaller side so we can really get to know each other and be that support for each other. I think community during this time is most important, and especially connecting with other women who are like-minded and who understand and can see birth as the way that it is, like, is so important. Community, I've been a part of so many women's circles, and it really has just changed my life. And I really would love to be a main portion of this offering. And there will also be access to a community page. I'm still deciding whether I want to do Facebook or like Telegram or something. But yeah, there will be a place for us community to, as questions arise throughout the months, to come and ask questions, or just like whatever's on your heart. There's also a VIP option. So this is like the most bang for your buck, I would say, because you get 3 1-to-1 hour meetings with me, and you have unlimited access to me via the Voxer app, and I will get back to you within 48 hours. There's a little bit of a price difference, but I really believe that that is the best bang for your buck, because other times to work with me, the pricing's a bit more. And this is also, I'm only allowing 3 spaces for this. So I want to keep it concise. What will we be learning? Embodiment equals ecstasy, how to use pleasure as a birthing tool, the way that birth is a psychedelic trip, and how we can tap into the different states of consciousness. A slight overview of anatomy and physiology. I don't want to do too much of the sciences, because there's so many birth educations out there that are very much about the anatomy and physiology, and this is what happens in birth, blah, blah, blah. You can Google that stuff. I want this to be more of an experience for you ladies, and how we relate to fear. Fear is huge in the birth world. And so there's an entire module dedicated to fear and pain. And so we can unpack that individually. How to create a birth plan for both home and hospital birth. As someone who's worked in the hospital for the past 5 years, I know some of the nuances of what can happen even throughout the country, of what you have access to and what to ask your provider to have at the birth for you, and how to best set yourself up to have an empowering hospital birth. It's possible. I've seen it. I know everyone talks about having, the home birth is the place you want to have an ecstatic birth, but it is possible to have a blissful, empowering birth in the hospital. You just have to know where to direct yourself. There will be a module on the 4th trimester and how to best set yourself up to have the most integrated 4th trimester as you can, and how to prepare for that time. I've talked to moms that have births. I've done what's the word, like research on my own to understand that. Like I said, there'll be Kundalini yoga, meditation exercises to help prepare your mind and spirit for birth. There's going to be a PDF nutrition guide that a dear colleague of mine, Dr. Brooke Scheller, I did a live with her as well. That's on my Instagram feed. You can check that out. And community, like I said, community is the most important thing. So leaning on your community. We're not meant to do this alone. We're not meant to go through any birthing of our lives, whether that's birthing a relationship, a business, an idea. When the contractions arise, it's so beneficial to have someone you can lean on and go to. And I hope to be that person for you, and also the women in this container. So just for registering, if you registered for this masterclass before, like if you registered, if you went through my Calendly and registered, you will automatically receive $100 off entering into the ecstatic birth. Also, I've decided to do an early bird launch price. I believe I'm going to do it up until November 1st. So even if you didn't register and you're just watching this as a replay, you will also have access to that $100 off. So if you did register, it's a total of $200 off. So this is, you know, really $577 and $799. And of course, there are payment plans available. I'm totally open to working out whatever is comfortable for your nervous system. But this is important too. It's like we need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest in the experience that we want to have. We put money into baby showers and weddings and gender reveal parties and getting the nursery just right. But it's like, what are we doing for ourselves? And there's also a 10% referral. So even if you didn't register and you're just watching this replay, if you tell someone about it and they come to me and they say, oh, I heard about this through so-and-so, you will automatically receive a 10% kickback of whatever option they choose. So that's exciting. Oops. So thank you so much for hanging in there. I know that was a lot of talking. It is both my honor and duty to serve and support women through their initiation of childbirth and into motherhood. I believe through education and embodied awareness, women can experience ecstatic, empowering, and healing experiences through their birth. It is my desire that you birth your baby on your terms with your full power, pleasure, and permission. That is my guiding light. That is what I am. That's what I'm doing. So ways to connect with me. I'm on Instagram as the Healing Hummingbird. You can check out my website. I just launched the landing page for the Empowered Birther. So if you have any questions or concerns, there's some more information about the Empowered Birther there. You would just go on and there's an application and you just click on the application and a Google Doc form will come up and you just fill that out and we can set up a discovery call to see if you're right for this program. I'm on Facebook, and also you can email me at lsagala89@gmail. All right, so that is the end. I'm gonna stop this recording now so I can go and digress with the people that are here. But if you're watching the replay, thank you so much for joining in, and do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about the program. Yeah, I'm here. I'm your girl. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.